Welcome to Topic A, everyone, here on WYLN. I'm Gary Perna. Today we are joined by Justin Behrens, who's running for state representative in the 119th district. This is a special edition of Topic A. And first of all, Justin, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Gary.
So today you're going to talk a lot about you and why you decided to run. And I guess the biggest part right now we want to get out of the way and talk about is the 119th district. There is a lot of confusion still of where the 119th district is, especially around Hazel Township and West Hazelton. So you have been doing a lot of door knocking. You've been talking to a lot of constituents in that area who are still kind of confused. So where is the 119th and who would you represent if elected?
That's a good question. And actually, it's funny you brought up the door knocking piece of it. When I actually was door knocking, there's a lot of people that are still confused and who their state rep is and where the area is. So to clarify that, I cover West Hazelton, Hazel Township, Freeland, Foster, Jetto, Whitehaven, Mountaintop, Larksville, Nanticoke, Plymouth, Newport, and then Sugar Notch and Warrior Run.
So it's a big area. And I do want to point out, do you have all of Hazel Township?
No, I actually have one ward I don't cover.
So there's one ward outside of the township that's not yours. And I know that seems to be a little bit of confusion for some people. And you've said when been door knocking, people are like, you're not running to my district, and you really are.
And that's exactly right. Most of the people, when I get there, most of them are, hey, it's great talking to you, and they talk about the issues. But there are those that actually are very familiar with their old state rep that they used to have 6 years ago. And they're like, no, that's who I'm going to vote for. And I'm like, unfortunately, that isn't going to be the person that's going to be on the ballot. But if you see my name, please vote for me.
So let's talk a little bit about you and your background. You are a military veteran, and I thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And you have served in the Army Reserves, correct?
Yep. I actually was in the Army Reserves for 12 years. I was called up to active duty during the Iraq War, where I served from 2003 to the end of 2005, well, the beginning of 2005, end of 2004. Served over in conflict in Iraq. People always say, hey, what was it like? What was it? I will tell you it was an honor. That's the biggest thing I will tell anyone is that it was an honor to serve over there. I love this country. I love the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I love my district. I will do anything it takes to fight for my country. And that's why I did. And then when I came back from Iraq, I got the privilege of actually serving in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, down in the detention center.
So a busy career. And you came home, and your full-time job right now is a social worker. So you are seeing a lot of the main issues that are really affecting this race and going towards the opioid addiction, even as far as property taxes, and people having trouble getting through daily life. So you've been hearing a lot of this for a number of years. So what led you to decide to run to be a state representative?
So I look at a state representative as almost like the watchdog of the state of Pennsylvania. We really need to look out for the constituents of the district that we represent. And that's why I'm running. I'm very frustrated with seeing the way the 119th has been, that the people here are hurting. You made a good point, as a social worker, what better person to be down in the state rep race than a social worker who represents the people. I don't call myself a politician, I call myself a public servant, because that's what I truly am. Ever since I started through the military, through social work, and now running for the state rep race, I feel that I'm a public servant. I want to help the people. People are hurting, and I see that day in and day out, and there's got to be something that needs to be done.
One of the things you've pointed out, and everything I think you've did and you've talked about, you've said you want to be a full-time state representative. You want to be there for the people from time elected on and moving forward. Why is it so important that you get that message out to the constituents?
Because there are a lot of state representatives that are down there, that they go down there, they get affiliated with an interest group, or they're working another job on top of that. This is a serious matter. When you're elected as a state representative, that means people of your district chose you to represent them. And that is your full-time state job. As of right now, I'm for government reform. I'm for we need to eliminate the size of the legislature down. Even if thinking even on a broader scale what we could do. But I'm elected to be a full-time state rep. Therefore, full-time means full-time. That doesn't mean having a part-time job at night. That doesn't mean I work, as another job doing something else while I'm also a state rep. Yeah, they can say that it doesn't interfere with your job because it's off time, but you are there 24/7 to represent the people, not to represent another group that you work for.
Something else you've said through your campaign is that you would turn down all perks and pension if elected as a state representative. Why do that? Why you're going there, you're doing all this work. Why turn it down?
Well, like I said, I'm for government reform. And there's a lot of perks out there that a state rep can have, whether it's the per diems, whether it's the company, what do you call it, the company car, or the car that, you get the allowance. No matter what it is, or the cell phone, that's all taxpayer money. Mm-hmm. That's all money that you and I pay for the government. And listen, we're not making, our budget's not getting balanced. We're not getting any of that. Everything helps. And if I'm going to make those decisions, I'm going to not take any of those perks. Mm-hmm. And more importantly is I'm not taking the pension. And everyone says, well, why wouldn't you want to take the pension? You got to think about your future, Justin. I'm going to invest in a 401k like everybody else does out there. If I'm going to make decisions on people's pensions out there on the state rep level, why would I take a pension of myself, the Cadillac pension that they have, and represent that? That's not right. I need to say, listen, if I'm going to represent truly the people, and I'm going to represent the constituents, then I need to put the money where my mouth is. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm turning down the pension.
All good points. I want to move on to property tax reform. Senate Bill, House Bill 76 has been flopping around for a while. It seems like people want it to happen, but at the same time, they're afraid to make movement on it. Where's your stand on the bill? Do you think it's something that needs to be done? Is there something more that can be done? Where do you see it right now?
I'm full support of Senate Bill and House Bill 76, 100%. And I'm going to tell you why. We were promised back in the day when, you remember, the casino money came in, they're saying, oh, that's going to be for property tax relief, property tax relief, property tax relief. We didn't see a single dime towards that. And I was door knocking, we talked about door knocking before. I was door knocking down in Nanticoke, and this lady comes out of the house, and she says, I introduced myself, and she starts crying. And we got to talking, and the house that she used as her retirement, she put all of her funds to buy that house, is now going to be given away to the government because she can't afford her property tax. That's not right. Property tax needs to be eliminated so that these individuals, the seniors, can have something that they can hand down to their generations. Something they work towards, which is paying off their house, can go passed down. So I am for the elimination of property tax, which is the House Bill 76 and Senate Bill 76. And here's the other point I want to make. We have a lot of individuals that co-sponsor that bill. Right. They're saying, hey, listen, I'm supportive of it, I'm supportive of it. I question if that bill ever came down to vote, would they still support it? Because, there's a lot of people that are trying to say, hey, listen, don't go that way, don't go that way. I think we can do it an alternative way. It's been proven. House Bill 76 has been proven in multiple different scenarios saying, listen, all you're doing is replacing one payment with another payment. So it's been already proved. Right. So let's get this through, let's get this done, and let's get it over with so that people can get back to their lives and live substantially, live a good life.
And I know this debate continues, and it's been going for a number of years about property tax reform and getting it done. And when you go out and you are door knocking, you shared that story. Is that one of the biggest concerns people are worried about, is losing their homes? Something they've worked for so many years? Without
a doubt. In my district, the 119th, that is probably the leading issue in every house that I door knock at. It doesn't matter. And here's the thing. You hear a lot of people saying, oh, the seniors, the seniors, the seniors. I 100% agree. The seniors are getting their houses taken away because they can't afford the property tax. But this also affects the middle-aged, individuals. Right. This is affecting the homeowner that's just first-time homeowner that's buying. Think about you don't have to worry about property tax. Now they can afford a home, where before maybe they were renting, before maybe they didn't, I can't afford the property tax along with the insurance and the mortgage. Right. Now they can afford it because now they don't have to worry about that property tax piece of it. And the best part is, with the House Bill 76 and Senate Bill 76, it talks about the slight income tax raise, and then the increase of sales tax by 1%, right. From 6 to 7. Now we have so much more revenue coming in from all the different sales tax that now it's like, I hate to say it, everyone's taking responsibility now for education.
And let's great segue. I was going to go to education and job creation. We down here, especially in southern Luzerne County, we have the big industrial parks. We have some of that stuff. Where some of the other parts of the district aren't that lucky. But getting people the education, public schooling, getting them into colleges and moving forward to come back and work here is another big thing that you've been hearing about. So how do we make sure education keeps getting funded? How do we make sure they come back and work here?
I know we only have a short amount of time here, and I could talk a lot about this. I'm actually very passionate about it. And I'll tell you where my passion comes from. Both my mother and father are public education teachers. They've done it for 35 years teaching education. They're both retired. You know, I'll probably say they're the best teachers in the world, even though, you know, they're my parents. I appreciate them. They taught me all my values too. And I saw the struggles that my father and mother went through. You know, I remember one day I came home and my dad comes home and my dad's like, hey, I got to go out to the store to buy supplies for my class tomorrow for my kids. And I'm sitting there in the back of my mind saying, why is my dad spending his money, you know, hard-earned money to support these classrooms when it should be the government or the state paying for this funding, properly funding education? And I don't think we do that. I think we really need to sit down now and look at how we're going to properly fund education so that our kids get the best education. Which comes to my next part. I actually am a Scoutmaster in the Boy Scouts, and I see a lot of Eagle Scouts, and I also see a lot of kids that are graduating, you know? And I ask them the question, I say, you know, what are you going to do when you graduate? And they're like, oh, we're going to go to college and do all this kind of stuff, which is great, wonderful. And then I say, well, then where are you going to live after that? And they're like, well, not here in Pennsylvania. And that's scary, because if we're not having our youth stay in our area, first of all, the tax base is leaving, right? So then who's the burden going to be paid on? You know, it's going to be the seniors, it's going to be, you know, the middle class. But we're not having them stay. And I said, well, why is that? Well, we don't have the good jobs here. And I said, well, what is a good job? And I look at it, there are lots of good jobs out there. The problem is that we're not pushing the education in the right way. I think we need to start pushing trade schools and also college education. We got the college education mastered. Every single kid goes to college. You know, go to college, go to college, go to college. I want to say it's okay for a teacher to say, hey, listen, you know, it's okay for you to go to a trade school if you want to. And let me tell you, I talked to a guy. He actually owns a business, an electrical business. He said, I'd hire someone to work in my electrical business that got trade, you know, through a trade school, paying him $80,000 a year to start. That's much more than I get paid as a social worker. So the jobs are there. I think we just need to start getting it honed in, and I think we need to start working with unions, start working with the community colleges, and start working with the VOTEC schools, and start promoting those trade schools. Hey, listen, it's okay to go to electrical school. It's okay to go to carpentry school. It's okay to go to cabinet making. Learn those skills. It's a trade that we've lost. We've lost them.
As somebody who's very passionate about education, and you said the trade schools and getting everyone the education they need to better themselves, you know, and stay here local. You know, right here we have the Career Center that has wonderful programs. And how would you in Harrisburg keep those trade programs going? How would you, what would be some of the things you would look to do to keep the career centers and trade programs going so we can keep those workers here?
Well, I think the biggest issue we have to do is we need to promote those trade schools and say that's okay. That stigma needs to be taken away and say, listen, it's okay to do those trade schools. Because if you go to a trade school, you're not going to have a high education bill. You know, you're not going to be paying a lot of, you know, education bills. You're going to come out with a great job, paying, you know, a decent amount of money. And three, you're going to have a skill that, you know, you'll have for the rest of your life. So I think we need to promote that. The second thing we need to do is we need to work together as a team. I truly feel education is a bipartisan issue. It's not a Republican or a Democrat issue. It's actually an American issue or a state issue. And what we need to do is we need to say, okay, let's work with the unions. Let's work with the community college. Let's work with the VOTEC school, and let's start promoting businesses. Let's start promoting trades that they could do. Maybe it's drone building. Maybe we could build something like that, and then bring in a company to do drone, you know, work.
And I want to ask you, you are a proud father of 2 children, and you are also proud that they are public school students.
That is 100% correct. I truly feel that our public education is excellent. I send my kids to, one goes to high school, one goes to grade school. I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old, Keegan and Aiden, and I send them to public school. I see them come back, I see the education they get, but I also hear those stories too from their teachers and also from my students that they're not getting funded properly. We're not getting the funding that they need, and we need to work on that.
Welfare. something you've, in your current job as a social worker, you kind of see day to day what goes on with welfare. There is out there right now so much waste, a lot of people say, and we see the Inspector General come out and they do reports and say, so much was used improperly. How do we reform that? Is there a way that we can kind of curve the way that is and rework welfare to work for those who really need it?
I think this is a cut and dry issue. You and I are expected to work, and we're expected to come into our job, and we're expected to follow our rules.
Right.
I agree. There needs to be some kind of welfare reform. And in saying that, if you're an able body and mind, that you're able to work, there should be no reason why you can't look for a job or try to get a job itself. You said to me a great example. I'm a social worker. My job is to get people back to where they need in their life. I can tell you, I have worked with the individuals in my program, and I've got them into resources in the community that are out there to get them jobs so that they can work, to get them off of welfare. The most amazing thing to see is an individual that works and gets their paycheck because they're like, I've just done something to make myself better. And there should be no reason. We need to start doing that. There was a welfare reform bill that was out there on the House floor. My opponent voted against it. I personally feel that if they're able to work and they're able, mind and body and soul, then they should be able to start looking for a job.
Right, very good point. And kind of in line with this, we've seen a huge problem with opioids, especially in this district. We've seen the effects it has on people, on those around those people who are affected by it. There has been some response from the state government and along with the federal government. What can we do? We understand that there's this large problem out there, but there's also ways that we can kind of help ourselves with it as well.
So we got businessmen down there as state reps. We got lawyers down there as state reps. I come back to it, I'm a social worker. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have a social worker down there as a state rep who lived, breathed, and slept this epidemic? Every day in my job, I go out and I can tell you somehow, somewhere, someone was affected by the opioid crisis. In saying that, you said, how do we fix this problem? There is really no really good magic wand to fix this problem, but we can start implementing things to start reducing this.
Right.
And some of the things I want to say is, the number one is education. I think we need to educate at a young age what this epidemic's about, what are those drugs out there, how do they affect you, so that it kind of takes that enticement away. I think we really need to start educating, and also start educating families about this issue. The second piece to that is rehabilitation. I know it costs a lot of money for rehabilitation, but again, the investment is worth the outcome. If it's someone's life that we're working with, we need to start working with rehabilitation, because this whole epidemic is getting wrapped up. The individuals majority of the individuals are just innocent bystanders that are just wrapped up in this whole epidemic, and we need to start working at that. And then the third piece of that whole thing is those that are bringing in those massive amount of drugs, those that are doing the high crime rate, there has to be strict justice punishment for them. And we need to start cracking down and say, hey, listen, we're not putting up with this. We need, we're not going to accept that. The other issue at this whole thing is, and I've been saying this before, majority of these issues are not a Republican issue. They're not a Democrat issue. We need to stop this fighting. We need to work together as a team, because who's getting hurt in this whole end? It's the constituents. It's the people that we represent. We need to say, hey, listen, these are all bipartisan issues. Let's do what's best for this county and what's best for the district.
I know we've talked a lot about some of the key issues that you're very passionate about here in the show. We've talked about property tax reform. We talked about education and healthcare. And I want to dive just a little bit further into healthcare. We kind of touched about it with the opioid addiction and social work with that. But we see a lot of people, and I'm sure as you've been out door knocking, especially a lot of seniors who say, well, this week I'm going to pay for my prescriptions, but next week I'm not going to be able to do that. What's your takeaway from that, and what are you hoping that maybe we could start to see moving forward with healthcare?
That's a really, really interesting question. And I'm going to tell you, so I struggle deep down with individuals that say, hey, listen, like you said with seniors, that I can't pay for my medication this day because I got to pay for my electric bill this day, or I can't pay for this because I got to pay for that. I think we really need to sit down in Harrisburg and say, How can we provide so that they can survive, right? Because that's really what the individuals are asking. They're not asking for, hey, give me a handout, give me this,
Right.
give me that. They just want to survive so that they can live a happy life, whatever it is. So we need to sit down. We need to start looking at how can we properly fund a lot of these programs that are out there. Which comes to saying, okay, Justin, you've been talking a lot about spending, spending, spending. How are we going to, pay for all this? And that's a great answer, or a great question. And to answer that is that we need to start cutting those wasteful spending. We need to really sit down. Gary, you and I are both asked to pay our bills, right? If we don't pay our electric bill, what happens?
It gets turned off.
It gets turned off. But in the state of Pennsylvania, it's okay. Just spend, 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 spend. We need to keep a budget, and we need to keep strict to that budget. And we need to make sure that we follow it and that we're not doing this wasteful spending. And if there is wasteful spending, we need to hold that accountable, and we need to cut that, or we need to figure a way to fund it differently, or figure out something so that we can actually have a budget and live within our means. Because if the state's asking the people to do that, why can't the state?
And you made a good point. I want to ask you this question. If you're elected and you're down in Harrisburg, the budget process is an overwhelming one, and it goes through it. As a social worker and with your background, do you think you'd be able to sit down and go through the budget, with your colleagues and be able to pull out that wasteful spending and be like, guys, why are we doing this? Why are we saying we can have vehicles and we can spend money on projects that go nowhere and do nothing? What would be your perspective behind it?
So I do have a little bit of familiarity with the budget. I'm actually an auditor for Wright Township. So on the township level, in Mountaintop, Wright Township, we do have to go through the budget. We have to look at the numbers. We have to look to see what's there. I can take that and bring it to a bigger scale, right? I can go through, and work with that budget. There are so many line items in our budget. It's difficult for one individual to go through all of them.
Right.
But again, it's a bipartisan issue, the budget. We need to sit together, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, and say, hey, listen, let's get this budget equal so that we know what we're spending and what's coming out. And we're not seeing that. We're seeing the fighting that goes on. And that's another thing I hear in door knocking. Individuals are sick and tired of the fighting. They don't like that fighting.
That was leading to my next question, was going to be, how do we work on a more bipartisan level with both, both chambers in the House, both Republicans and Democrats, to reach across the aisle and to work on issues that affect everybody. You've said this whole show, it's not a Democrat, it's not a Republican issue. It's an issue that affects everybody, and everything I think that happens in Harrisburg affects everybody, especially if you're a resident of Pennsylvania. So how do we reach across the aisle, and how do we keep that line of communication open?
I think it starts with your state rep. I'm willing to work with both sides, Republican, Democrat, and independents, all three sides if you want to say. I really feel that you lead by example. When I go down to Harrisburg, I'm going to start working with Democrats and Republicans, because you made a great point, and that's exactly what I drive home all the time, is the ones that get hurt behind these decision-making, the fighting, the bickering that's going on, is the individuals that live in our district. And the bottom line is, I want to work together as a team, and I want to make sure that everybody gets what they need, that all their voices are spoken so that they get what they have. And that's really the issue.
And I know also, talking with that, we've seen, especially in our area, where we've had a lot of people go to Harrisburg and they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk when they go down there to do their job. How are we going to hold Justin accountable if elected?
Well, we have a great thing that happens every 2 years in the state rep race, and that's an election, right? We've given individuals 8 years right now to make something different for the 119th. People aren't happy with what's going on the 119th. I think his time is up, and we need to let someone else in there, which is myself. But then hold me accountable, right? If you're not happy with what I'm doing, then vote against me, right? And then vote me out so that vote someone else in. I live on three things. I live on the social work code of ethics, right? We have a great code of ethics that I follow. I live on the military principles of honor and pride and integrity. And then the third thing is I have my faith that I believe in. With those three things, I lay my head down on my pillow and know that I've done everything to help the 119th, the constituents. Not help me, right, my best interest, not help the interest groups that are out there, but help the constituents of the 119th. That's the bottom line. And that's where we've missed, that's where their government has missed. They're missing that whole part. No longer do we represent the people. You know, we represent either our own personal values or our own personal issues, or we represent the interest groups. We don't represent the people of the 119th, and I want their voice to be spoken. Yeah, I have conservative values. Right. That's why I'm a Republican, you know. But I also understand that we need to represent what the people of my district need. And that's what makes a good leader, is someone that understands what the people need.
In talking with you, you have a lot of great points. In what you're saying are really the key values that I think we have here in our area, especially within the 119. When you're elected and you're down in Harrisburg, and this kind of piggybacks on the last question I just asked, some representatives, senators, kind of lose that disconnect with their homes and talking with those people. How would you make sure that stays open? How do you make sure that you are connected to your office, you know, here in the 119th, when you're working there and hearing the constituents of your district, so you know exactly what's going on?
Well, the biggest issue, I think, is making yourself accessible to the individual, making yourself accessible to the 119th. And I've had ideas that I've tossed around with my wife and all that, and I'm willing to talk about them right now. I think one of the big things is, what happened to town hall meetings? What happened to saying, hey, listen, I'm in your neck of the woods, come on out, talk to me. And I truly feel that the state rep should walk through the entrance and leave the entrance, not go through a back door. If it gets heated and you know something's going on, they should be there to take the hit because they're there to represent the individuals. So I'm all for town hall meetings. I'd love to have a town hall meeting in all the different municipalities throughout the year. So, you know, start in West Hazelton, then go to Hazel Township, then go to Freeland, then go to Mountaintop, and vice versa. Also, I think what we need to do is we need to start having committees, right, in our area. Because, listen, I cover a huge area in my district. And I can tell you, Hazel Township and West Hazelton have a lot of different issues than Mountaintop or Larksville, Nanticoke, and Plymouth have. So by having those committees, they're your ears and eyes, you know, in the trenches that can tell you, hey, what are the issues that need to be faced? Because here, again, like I said, I'm not here to represent my own personal beliefs. I'm not here to represent what the interest groups are. I'm here to represent what the 119th needs and what their issues are.
And you've hit the nail right on the head with that one. That was a great thing. We have 1 minute left in the show here. I want to give you the time to talk directly to the constituents of the 119th and tell them why they should vote for Justin Behrens on Election Day and why you deserve their vote.
My name's Justin Behrens. I serve this country pride in the military. I love this country and I love the state. I've been walking across this district, talking to the individuals and hearing their concerns and hearing what their voice needs to be spoken. It's about time that the 119th has an individual there that's willing to fight for the individuals. In saying that, by my military background and being a social worker, I understand what it takes to help those individuals and make sure that their voice is spoken. And that's why I humbly ask for your vote.
Well, Justin, thank you so very much for coming on and talking with us here and getting your points out so everybody knows. Again, Election Day is coming up. Justin Behrens running in the 119th District right here in Pennsylvania. So make sure you get out and exercise your right to vote. If you agree with Justin, you're voting for him. If you don't, hey, that's okay. But make sure your voice is heard. That's what's so great about living in America and living in this great country. Again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for joining us, everyone, on the Special Topic A. We'll catch you next time here on WYLN.